All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. So the Las Vegas Raiders have been making some moves. Christian Wilkins, Gardner Minshew, Alexander Mattison, a few others. They still have the 13th pick in the draft. They still have some free agent cap space if they want to use it. And, we're about a month away from the NFL draft. And everyone's wondering, is Gardner Minshew going to be the quarterback? Is Aiden O'Connell going to be the quarterback? Because 13 is a place where you can draft a guy like Bo Nix, or maybe even take a reach on or a flyer on a guy like Michael Penix Jr. These more quote-unquote draft or NFL-ready players coming out of the draft. And Antonio Pierce had an interesting couple of things to say, and a lot of people are freaking out. So we're going to go over it. Here's what Antonio Pierce had to say about the Raiders quarterback room. Well, you can't have two quarterbacks on the roster, right? So we know we have to add some, Pierce said Sunday in an interview with NFL Network Steve Weich from the annual league meeting. The next wave is the draft, so we'll see. And I think a lot of people are just kind of freaking out about this. You'll keep in mind, man, the Raiders were a much different team last season, especially this time last season. Josh McDaniels still being the head coach. But in my opinion, everything Antonio Pierce said just kind of makes me think that they're going to take a quarterback in like the second round, third round, fourth round, and just keep that QB room competitive. You want to speak highly about your young rookie quarterback or quarterback coming off his rookie season in Aiden O'Connell, and you also want a quarterback competition, right? So, the Gardner Minshew $15 million guaranteed contract, to me, that kind of signals that it's a long shot that the Raiders would trade up into the top 5 or even in like the top 8 to select a rookie QB. But that's what we're going to talk about in tonight's video. But before we do, if you guys enjoy it, be sure to hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content, along with daily Raiders videos. Raiders fans, if you guys could try and get this video to 250 likes, that would mean the absolute world to me. So here's a deeper quote about what Antonio Pierce had to say earlier today. Quote unquote, I got Tom Telesco in there, got the magician, figure out what he's got up his sleeve. Pierce said he's done it for a long time. I got a lot of trust in him. I think he's seen it wherever he's been. Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck becomes a GM with the Chargers, Phillip Rivers, Justin Herbert. So he knows something about QB. So I'm going to let him figure it out. At the end of the day, listen, Aiden O'Connell played his ass off. He did a hell of a job with us. You're talking about a kid that has the mental toughness to play in the National Football League. Whatever happens and whatever we do, it has to go through Aiden O'Connell. Being honest with you, he's earned that right. So just basing off that quote alone, or basing that quote about Aiden O'Connell and then just factoring in that they paid Gardner Minshew $15 million to kind of be this bridge / backup QB for Aiden. Keep in mind, man, Aiden O'Connell in the last month of the season absolutely lit it up. 8 total touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a bunch of wins. You took down the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas Day. You put up 63 against the Chargers. You got a nice Week 18 win against the Denver Broncos. I agree with Antonio Pierce, and I agree with a lot of you guys in the comment section saying that, look, Aiden O'Connell deserved this. So that quote makes me think, and it's weird because a lot of it's contradictory. A lot of this stuff, even though we're 2 weeks into free agency, a lot of what GMs are saying or head coaches or any management personnel member of any team, a lot of it's just smoke and mirrors. So in my opinion, I know we did hear that Tom Telesco is still making calls a week or two ago, that he's still making calls to potentially trade up in the top 5-ish range to select a Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy or what have you. But judging from this quote, man, it kind of gets me thinking that they'll take a QB at earliest in the second round, and that they'll take a QB maybe in the third or fourth. And a couple of QBs come to mind. You got Michael Penix Jr. One of the big knocks for Michael, and we talked about this in our last video on why the Raiders should potentially look into him, is his injury history. And I think, wouldn't shock me if a team drafts Michael Penix Jr. in the first round, because as we know, if you're the GM of a team and you got a guy, you found your quarterback, you got to trade up and get him so somebody doesn't snag him, right? I can see Michael Penix Jr. being drafted in the late first round, but I think more realistically, because of his injury concerns and not too many quarterbacks or not too many teams desperately need a rookie QB, I can see Michael Penix being drafted in the second round. And the Raiders have some draft capital. They have some draft value where they could trade up mid, early second round, late first round, and select a guy like Michael Penix Jr. That does not mean that he has to be QB1. That does not mean you can run an entire season with Aiden O'Connell being QB1. We've said it on this channel before, and I'll say it again. Even if Gardner Minshew doesn't play a snap in a regular season game for the Las Vegas Raiders this upcoming season, I still think it's beneficial for them to have this leader, to have this veteran, a guy who went 7-6 last year, being the backup QB once he got thrown into the starting spot when Anthony Richardson went down. He earned a Pro Bowl nod. Like, Gardner Minshew's been across the league. He's not old. He's in the prime of his athletic career. I think that was more just a safety net and somebody to make either Aiden O'Connell or a rookie QB's job easier and just give him, a shoulder to lean on, a voice, a veteran voice. You get what I'm saying? What I think now is kind of more likely, as opposed to drafting Michael Penix Jr. somewhere in the second round, could even be a Jordan Travis pickup in the third or fourth round or wherever they decide to draft him. What I like about that is there's not intense pressure. Like, if you draft Jaden Daniels or you draft JJ McCarthy, or if you draft Michael Penix Jr. at pick number 13, there's this kind of immediate pressure for a guy like Aiden O'Connell to come in and perform. And it's like, yeah, if you don't perform like you did last season, we're going to just run it with, Michael Penix, right? So what I like about the idea of drafting Jordan Travis is you just kind of have this developmental QB to have behind Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, and then we'll let those two battle it out for QB1 in camp. Keep in mind as well, as we were alluding to at the beginning of this video, the Raiders had 3 quarterbacks last season. I know a lot of that was, Jimmy Garoppolo's struggles and just kind of the reluctancy to have Aiden O'Connell be thrown in there. It wasn't until Antonio Pierce was the official interim head coach that we saw Aiden O'Connell finally get a shot. But I'm perfectly fine next season running with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew as my QB1 and QB2. So Raiders are still making moves. We've been doing this on this channel, this kind of, Bleacher Report did this like one word to describe every team's free agency thus far. The Raiders was odd because they said Christian Wilkins seemed like a luxury spend they couldn't afford, especially considering holes elsewhere. If they draft an offensive lineman, an offensive tackle in the first round at pick 13, and they pick up a guy like Xavier Howard in the free agency market, that sentiment doesn't even really make much sense to me to begin with. But that would be quickly, disproven if they were to, draft an offensive lineman, an offensive tackle at pick 13, pick up a veteran stud free agent like Xavier Howard, and then draft the backup QB in round like 3 or 4. So I love what the Raiders are doing this offseason. Once again, they're not having this crazy busy offseason because they don't need to. They're a good team. They went 5-4 under Antonio Pierce, and this upcoming season, you want to make the playoffs and you expect to make the playoffs. So we'll wait and see what they decide to do at the draft, but let me know what you guys are thinking the Raiders should do with the quarterback spot or with pick number 13. That's it from me. Hit that like button, hit that sub button. See you next.